Hello there. You're watching News Channel Nebraska. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. The Nebraska State Patrol is investigating a shooting in Columbus where an officer shot a 17-year-old. Columbus police say officers were sent to 41st Avenue and 38th Street yesterday at 1 p.m. to conduct a welfare check on a teenage boy who was potentially harming himself. During the check, an officer shot a 17-year-old boy. The teenager died at the scene. Columbus police requested the Nebraska State Patrol conduct the in-custody death investigation. Columbus Public Schools said 2 schools nearby, Lost Creek Elementary and Columbus High School, were temporarily placed into secure status for around 15 minutes before returning to normal. Columbus police have placed the officer involved on administrative leave. 1 person was killed, another hospitalized in a crash in northeast Nebraska earlier this week. According to the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, it happened just east of Hoskins on Highway 35 Monday morning. According to Sheriff Jason Twinell, a vehicle was eastbound on Highway 35 when it collided with a westbound semi. The eastbound vehicle then went into the ditch, according to the Sheriff's Office. The driver of the eastbound vehicle was pronounced dead at the scene. The semi-driver was taken to a nearby hospital. They've since been released. The Wayne County Sheriff's Office did not release the names of the drivers involved or a potential cause for the crash. The accident itself remains under investigation. A Central Nebraska teen headed to trial court on a motor vehicle homicide charge. Court records indicate 18-year-old Nathan Mosley of Genoa waived a probable cause hearing Monday. Prosecutors have charged Mosley with felony motor vehicle homicide DUI related to the death of 25-year-old Roxana Corona. That crash happened in rural Nance County back in December. County sheriff's officials say Mosley was driving a vehicle with 6 passengers when the vehicle rolled. All 6 were hospitalized. Corona later died of her injuries. Mosley's case has been transferred to district court where he'll be arraigned on March 15th. First responders called to the scene of a UPS store in North Lincoln after receiving reports of a suspicious package Tuesday afternoon. Police received the call at about 4 p.m. Police and fire officials began an investigation on North 27th Street. A bomb squad investigator and the FBI were eventually called in as well, arriving at the scene shortly before 5:30. In addition to the UPS store, patrons and employees of a nearby Crunch Fitness were asked to evacuate that building. No other details have been released. Well, northeast Nebraska first responders called to a lake in Pierce County after an ice fisherman's shack sank into the water. Pierce Fire and Rescue and Nebraska Game and Parks were called to Willow Lake in response to the incident. The department says 2 ice fishers started fishing and eventually moved to a different spot where the ice is thinner. As that ice deteriorated, the fishers abandoned their UTV, their gear, and their shack. Pierce Fire and Rescue said everyone involved is alive and well, though they're cautioning that ice conditions are rapidly deteriorating throughout the state. Well, as early as today, the House could re-vote on impeaching Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. That's according to Representative Ken Buck. And it's after a shocking setback for the resolution last night. Also today is a planned Senate vote on a controversial measure involving immigration, Israel, and Ukraine. That follows the failure of a standalone Israel bill in the House yesterday. Amy Kiley has the latest.
Okay, what's round 2? We need a round 2 here.
That question could apply to a number of issues before Congress. They include 2 GOP plans the House shot down last night. One is a resolution to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
The principle is very clear that Mayorkas did not commit a high crime or misdemeanor.
It lowers the grounds of impeachment to a point where we can expect it to be leveled against every conservative Supreme Court justice, every future Republican president and cabinet member the moment the Democrats take control.
Despite defectors, yesterday's failure is mainly due to the temporary absence of Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Meanwhile,
the bill is not passed.
A plan to support Israel with standalone legislation faces an uncertain future. It's from the House Speaker, who met with families of hostages and his Israeli counterpart yesterday.
History beckons us to act boldly and decisively
to defend Israel.
Today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv to discuss a possible ceasefire, and the Senate voting on a package aimed at Israel, border security, and Ukraine. Although some supporters acknowledge
It's been killed, it's been beaten. It was beaten before it even saw the light of day.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Yeah, both of Nebraska's U.S. senators are part of a group of Republicans expected to tank that major bipartisan border deal and foreign aid package with assistance for Ukraine and Israel in a vote on Wednesday. Both U.S. Senators Pete Ricketts and Deb Fischer attacked the $118 billion bill that's also been criticized by former President Trump and top House Republicans. A failed vote will amount to a stunning rebuke by Senate Republicans of a deal that would have enacted restrictive border measures and was crafted in part by one of their own members. The expected outcome poised to leave aid for two key U.S. allies, Ukraine and Israel, in jeopardy at a critical time. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, said Tuesday it will not become law. As for Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, he's harshly criticized Senate Republicans for opposing it, accusing them of following Trump's marching orders. Closer to home, the Nebraska State Legislature's Education Committee heard testimony Tuesday on a bill that would potentially allow Nebraska public school students to take religious class during the day. The bill was introduced by State Senator Lauren Lippincott of Central City. It would allow school boards to adopt policies allowing for voluntary studies. Under the bill, the religious instruction classes would have to be provided by a sponsoring entity away from school property. Meanwhile, a bill that would protect insurance holders who undergo a colonoscopy by closing a coverage loophole moving forward in the state legislature. State Senator Carol Blood of Bellevue introduced the bill, which passed the first of 3 rounds of voting Tuesday morning. If passed, the bill would guarantee insured patients would not be charged additional fees for a medical service, including when doctors remove a polyp during a colonoscopy. Under the Affordable Care Act, a colonoscopy is considered a screening service. That means there's no out-of-pocket cost charged to the patient. But in Nebraska, it becomes a diagnostic procedure if a polyp is removed, costing the patient. Health experts in the state say they're worried about the growing use of opioids, but they're confident that a new state law removing some case-by-case confidentiality will go a long way to curbing overdoses. But as Joe Jordan tells us, plenty of questions still remain.
According to numbers just released, we now know that in 2021 alone, 214 Nebraskans died of an overdose or a drug poisoning. I'm Joe Jordan reporting. We also know that in Douglas County alone, on average, there's 1 overdose each week, and half of those are tied to opioids. All these numbers coming as the state's single largest county health department works to overcome the overdose problem. But those numbers don't always come with answers.
In 2023, currently what has come through our vital statistics office, we know that there's at least 60 overdose deaths, and 33 of those were due to opioid.
Because of the border problem, we hear a lot about the scourge of fentanyl. Is there any indication that of those 33 cases you just mentioned, that fentanyl was the majority of those cases?
We aren't able to get that because it all comes through the autopsies.
Have you gotten any blowback from, for instance, doctors worried that this effort's going to show who's overprescribing?
I have not heard of any.
Because we know that's going on, right?
That I don't have.
We're told the information we're looking for is forthcoming. In the meantime, armed with a new state law that loosens confidentiality restrictions, this new overdose review team is looking to find answers to the overdose problem. In Omaha, Joe Jordan, News Channel, Nebraska.
For the second time in as many months, authorities have responded to the home of a former state senator for what turned out to be a false report. Former Senator Adam Morfeld posted on X Tuesday that his home has once again been swatted. That's where an emergency call is placed with the intention of drawing a large response from law enforcement and public safety personnel. Well, Lincoln police say they'd already been investigating a previous swatting call made to Morfeld's residence in December that reported circumstances indicating both he and his wife were in immediate danger. Health news, medical professionals sounding the alarm about prescription drug shortages. Experts testified before U.S. lawmakers Tuesday about the basic life-saving drugs they say are often in short supply, those including older generic sterile injectables that are considered a staple in hospitals, like painkillers, anti-infectives, and even cancer treatments. The experts say there are now more than 250 active medication shortages. Now, drug shortages are nothing new, but 2023 saw some of the worst in nearly a decade, affecting millions. That's according to data from a pharmacy professionals group known as the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. In a survey of that group's members over the summer, nearly all said they were short the drugs they needed to treat their patients. Officials in Ecuador say they think they've pinpointed the source of the lead poisoning in cinnamon applesauce packets sold in the U.S. They believe that lead originated from a ground cinnamon processor called Carlos Aguilera. They're no longer in operation. Now, it's unclear how the lead got into the cinnamon, but one FDA official believes it was intentional. They say some suppliers try to bulk up food sold by weight by adding things like lead to it. The Food and Drug Administration says it has limited authority over foreign ingredient suppliers who don't ship directly to the U.S. So far, the CDC reports more than 400 children in the U.S. have elevated blood lead levels linked with applesauce, including multiple cases here in Nebraska. A Nebraska Creative District changing directions in its 2024 grant application to include a new downtown park. The Falls City City Council approved a new letter of intent for the Creative District to include converting an empty lot near the public library in Stone Street to an outdoor amphitheater and meeting space. City officials say the new park was a popular idea at community meetings and discussions with the Richardson County Arts and Humanities. An earlier proposal to transform Pritchard Auditorium into a wellness center has been put on the shelf. The U.S. Census Bureau says it has decided not to move forward with a controversial change. The Bureau had proposed a new set of questions that would have asked people with a disability to rate their level of difficulty with certain activities instead of answering yes or no. Based on those responses, the Bureau had proposed that its main estimates of disability would count only the people who report a lot of difficulty or cannot do it all, and eliminating those who respond with some difficulty. The agency's director said in a blog post Tuesday the proposed questions could have shrunk the estimated rate of disability in the U.S. by about 40%. The Census Bureau director said the decision to drop the proposal based on feedback from the public. The Bureau says it plans to keep the current ACS disability questions for its next collection year in 2025. Now, the farming industry, known as the backbone of Nebraska, and safety is one of its most important parts. Luke Stera has more from an ag safety event in Columbus.
Safety is of the utmost importance in the agricultural world, and Columbus Community Hospital aimed to assist farmers at their first safety conference on Tuesday. Everything from grain bin safety to blood pressure screenings were offered to farmers in the Columbus area. Ag Safety Committee member Wade Hilker says the event offers an opportunity to remind farmers to take care of their health.
To try to incorporate ag safety concepts in a thought process so that workers are always in the mindset of being safe, having a priority of that, let everybody go to work and let everybody come home.
Hilker says a lot of times farmers push through the pain instead of taking time to focus on their health.
Instead of us being first thought, we got to take care of ourselves, a lot of times we have to get the job done. Work through the pain, bust through it, get it done. And a lot of times we need to refocus.
With some farmers aging, safety is a priority, but nurturing the new generation of farmers and topics about safety, finances, and unknowns is just as important.
For our younger members, as they return home, have the uncomfortable conversations of how do I take over? How do I take those next steps?
Our farmers are aging. What are the next steps for those next generations to take on that responsibility? Because that's a huge undertaking as well. You're never too young to learn about finances.
Many vendors were at the event talking through steps with farmers about keeping themselves safe on farmland. One of those was dermatologist Dylan Clary, who says an annual skin check is reasonable and taking the proper steps to protect from the sun is important.
It's making sure that we're protecting ourselves from the sun, so wearing sunscreen, wearing wide brim hats, wearing long sleeve clothing. The more we can do to prevent sun exposure is good.
Clary also says it's important to know where those services are offered, especially for those exposed to the sun for long periods of time. With farmers being an important part of the state's industry, Fruing says the event serves as a reminder for workers across Nebraska.
Safety is very, very important from a day-to-day aspect, whether you're working on the farm or just self-care.
In Columbus, I'm Luke Stera, News Channel Nebraska.
You can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com. Click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Eric McKay, and you've been watching News Channel Nebraska.